What's going on, Javi Lobby? It's your boy Javier with the Javier Show. Make sure you say it twice. I had a great conversation with Bobby Feeno. You might know him as Arian Foster on his Twitch network. We had a great conversation that lasted for 3.5 hours. So I decided to break it up into a 4-part series, something that you could all enjoy and digest. We talked about the black community. We talked about Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, what it means to be a black conservative, what it means to be a black progressive, what are some of the policies that we care about. And we just went deep. It got very philosophical, political, and a little religious. So we talked about all of those things. So that's what it's all about. So if you're new to the channel, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video at least twice. Now, let's get into the conversation. All right. So we got 2 issues. We could branch off into a few other ones, but let's focus on these 2 issues. The racist cop, there's a way to deal with that. For one, we do extensive psychological tests on police officers to make sure that they don't hold any biases that may actually hinder them from doing their job properly, that may result into them killing a black man unjustly. Sometimes you don't know until after the fact. Some people, we don't know they racist. They do a well enough job to hide it. How do you deal with somebody who can hide their racism? I don't know how. At least we haven't figured out a way to truly know if somebody's racist, even if they don't know they're racist.
Well, yeah, I mean, your president just tried to or did veto one of the ways that you can help with it, right? By racial sensitivity training in government institutions. He just
No, I think it was
executive
critical race theory.
No,
I think
there was racial that's part of it, but part of critical race theory is racial sensitivity and teaching people. And see, this is the fundamental difference a lot of people have. What I have with a lot of people is they think racism is just I think he's a nigger. Like that's not what racism is, right?
There's covert racism.
There you go.
Racism.
And so that's why you need racial sensitivity training. A lot of people don't even know that they're carrying out racial stereotypes, or they hold racial stereotypes in their head that are damaging to folk. And so
I've done some research into that, and I'm having a hard time finding the studies that justify that it works.
That racial sensitivity works?
That it actually makes a big impact on whether or not people it makes an impact on the outcomes. Teaching
bringing awareness to harmful tropes and ideologies towards black folk and people of color in general. You're saying is not a net positive?
No, I'm saying that would be a positivity. I'm saying I can't find the data to back up that it's having the effect that it's supposed to have. That they say if we teach racial sensitivity training, that it somehow actually shows that it works, that it actually helps people from not being biased. I mean, you might have data that I don't have, and I'm open to hearing it, but I haven't seen the studies that show that the training actually changes the outcomes that we've been seeing in a long-term trend.
I mean, I think all you have to look at is like racial crimes in America, right? Mm-hmm. You can look at that data point and the implementation of these. I'll link you to studies. At any point.
That'd be great.
I'll link you to studies. But if you look at our history, right, our racist history, and how it's slowly declining, right? I would never say that we're not making progress as a country with race issues, right? We are, but we have a long way to go, right? We have a lot of unraveling to do, and these kind of things are just going to continue to help. I think the blowback is it's white folks saying, "I'm tired of people telling me I'm racist." I think that's what the blowback is.
Yeah, I mean, but you could understand for somebody who doesn't have in their own minds, they don't have any animosity towards people of color. And then people turn around and say you're racist. You could understand how that could become frustrating. I mean, if
only way I can understand is if they're an unempathetic human being. That's the only way I can understand. Because I don't like to liken these things together because they're very separate issues. LGBT rights and black folk
Yeah.
rights are very separate issues, and I don't like to mince the two, right? But there are certain things that are analogous. I was very ignorant to LGBTQ issues, right? Very ignorant. I just didn't understand them, right? And I was even conservative to a point where I don't want to get into the trans issue, right? But I was like, yo, men are men, women are women, right? Until I really until somebody was like, yo, you're kind of transphobic, and I was like, what the fuck? I don't have a problem with them. I'm just saying men are men and women are women, and I started listening to him. And what I got from him, well, the first thing I did was I listened to him. I was like, well, show me how. How am I transphobic? And I started listening. I was like, damn, you know what? Some of the things that I was saying, some of the things that I thought, and some of the things that I was perpetuating as science or true, was damaging to a people. And because I was willing to listen, like I wasn't frustrated with them calling me transphobic. I was just confused, like me, like I'm for people. Like how am I
Do you think
transphobic?
do you think the black community is transphobic
Oh yeah,
and homophobic
oh yeah,
or
oh yeah.
racist?
Oh yeah, but I think that, and I don't think it's in. Well, I won't say that. I think it is. It is something that has been taught, right? And it's something that me and you can both agree with. Homophobia is rampant in the Christian community, right? And Christianity was beaten into black folks from the onset of this country, right? And so this is why I don't really understand black conservatives, and I don't really understand black Christians. It doesn't make any sense to me. But a lot of the South, especially, right? Black folks are, and this is totally typecasting. Of course, there's outcasts, but a lot of the South is extremely homophobic, transphobic, right? But in order for no, because I was transphobic. I wasn't transphobic in the sense of like I was actively. It's just I held ideologies that were damaging to a people, and until I was open minded enough to listen, I had no idea. But I wasn't frustrated. Like it's just like I
Yeah.
could empathize with the people who were marginalized.
Yeah. I think you know how we said earlier things are complicated, and there are multiple factors that we're playing on. We're playing. This is an onion, and there's multiple layers, and
Sure.
the more you peel away, you get deeper and deeper into it. And there are the people who hear the word racist, and they really do believe that you're calling them a piece of shit racist. Like you hate black people.
Right.
Then there are the group of people who think, well, yeah, I am a racist. I don't like black people.
Mhm.
And sometimes those two people feel like you're equating, like people can feel like you're equating the two. The guy who lynches a black man, and then the guy who just works at, I use the example, Home Depot and doesn't do anything to harm black people. When you're saying both of you are complicit in racism, that guy thinks you're equating him to that dude that would lynch a black person. And we need to have conversations like this so we can clear up exactly what it is that you mean. Because I see David Sherman say you call him a racist, and
And actually, I never really did. He called
I
himself a
watched,
racist, which was hilarious.
I saw exactly
It
what
was hilarious.
happened.
And then he went off for the next couple of days, like race, like what he's saying, calling me a racist is like. Well, I was like, bro,
So
I'm
why
done with
don't
you,
you
man.
understand black conservative? Because I'm a black atheist conservative.
Right,
So
that's even weirder. All right, so hold on, real quick to your point.
okay,
Um, uh, these conversations are being had, right? As far as the kind of racism that it is, but people don't want to talk about it. When I say people, I mean on the right side of the aisle, majority, and white folks, majority. Like they don't like to talk about it because of just what you said. It makes me feel like I'm one of and what we're trying to say. And part of critical race theory is just that. It lets you know and understand how racism works and operates in America. Like it lets you know. Like we both agree that racism is not just people throwing around nigga. Like we like it's systems, it's institutions, it's biases, it's marketing, it's a whole litany of issues that is used to perpetuate these things. And so the issue isn't why aren't we having these conversations? The issue is are people susceptible to the information that's being presented to them? And they're just not, right? And so people I think who are detrimental to shit like this is like conservative folks like Ben Shapiro, cats like that, like where he's like, give me the data, facts over feelings. Like social science does not work like physics. I say this all the time. It's not the same thing. Like hard numbers in social science don't necessarily exist. Like because there's so many different variables, the human factors that you have to account for. And so when you're dealing with social science, anecdotes matter, right? People's experiences matter. That's all. That's really all social science is. And so in order to try to get to the crux of the issue, like you have to be able to listen to people and listen to
Yeah.
them with good intent. Because if you're just listening to listening to finish talk so you can talk, there's just no point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the goals. I think most people say, man, you should have told him this, you should have told him that, you should have said this. You gotta listen to what people are saying. Um, I think where the left goes wrong on a lot of these issues is they try to clump a lot into one movement. They try to pull a lot into something, and it's not necessarily simple enough for you to just say police brutality, um, you know, gay, trans. We take all of these issues and we try to like create this one large movement to create a massive change all across the board. And then you have to slow down and say, okay, but these particular issues, like you just said, like the LGBT is not the same as the black issue. And when you have different groups of people with all different ideas on what they mean when they say a certain thing, it becomes confusing as fuck. Like I've heard people say, abolish the police. We want no police. And then you got people say, we're not talking about abolishing the police. We're talking about reallocating funds to one place to another.
Right.
And then it's like, well, why should I trust you? Why shouldn't I trust the guy who's saying get rid of the police altogether? You know, we have to have a clear, concise, like a surgeon, in order to really address the issue and get down and fix it.
You will never have that though. When has there ever been a monolithic idea that people have agreed on?
There's never been.
Never in the human history. So what
But
you
you
have to
can't be
look.
surprised at the backlash because different people are hearing different things. Different
Yes,
people are.
yes you can because so when I hear the Proud Boys or like them far right wing idiots, right? When they saying like and when they want ethno states, I don't take them niggas seriously. You know what I'm saying? Like, cause it's not gonna happen. It's just they don't have the manpower for it. Like, I don't take that shit seriously. But when I hear like, that's why I don't like to call everybody a Nazi, right? Like, that's not my thing. So like, I look at the academics or the serious politicians who are taking these issues head on, and I work from there and try to understand that every single thing, every single idea that is propped up is on a spectrum. And so you have people way over here, you have people way over here, and you have people everywhere in between. And everything, and when you start looking at things not black and white and start looking at it as a spectrum, you get a more nuanced view of things. And so like I understand you're on a conservative spectrum, right? But to me, you're a little more left leaning than what I initially thought. Just hearing you talk,
Yeah.
right? So everything is on that spectrum. And once you start looking at the world like that, it opens up. And to me, like these kind of conversations, where I view to be productive, can start happening more rather than trying to like pin people down on like you do this or you do this.
Yeah, that's why when I heard you make the statement when you're talking to David Silverman, you said that you would like to have more people on that you disagree with. They just won't come on.
Yeah.
And that's why I reached out to you. Because I heard what David was saying. I heard what you were saying. I was like, it'd have been nice to have been there to kind of try to make sense of because I thought y'all was missing each other on some issues. And
Now I know where he coming from. I do know where he coming from, and I just disagree. And
yeah,
you started to allude to it, but we got off track. But you started to allude to it, and
I think that there are serious issues in the black community that
sure,
has to be addressed,
sure,
and we have to deal with them. And I think what David was trying to say is you got a totem pole, and up here you got certain issues,
mm-hmm.
and racism falls somewhere like down here, but
Right.
yet we're ignoring all of these things, which we're not ignoring. There are
Thank you.
people who are trying to fight those things,
There you
right?
go. Yeah.
I think the frustration comes in that is why is racism getting so much energy over those things, which I think he was trying to say he had a problem with. You
because I
know,
think because I think uh, it's the point I pointed out to him in which he conceded. It's he thinks that racism one isn't a big deal because it doesn't apply to him. But two, this hierarchy that he kept bringing up, right? It's not that we don't care about it; he don't care about it, right? There's plenty of organizations that work on all of these things, right? And I've done work with a lot of people. And like I said, my sister's an activist and she does work all the time, right? And so people are working on these things all the time. Certain things become politicized and the media gets a hold of it, and it's a little hyperbolic in the sense that like me walking down, this is not the 1920s where I'm walking down the street and I could really get, that's not the same situation, right? Nobody's making that argument, right? But what we're saying is that these institutions have an overwhelming bias negatively towards us, and that has to be remedied. And this is the data I gave him. This data, like, and this y'all love data so much. Like I gave you those data, and these kind of things are prevalent throughout our criminal justice system, right? Yeah. And so nobody makes the argument that there's not issues in the black community, right? But the problem is a lot of the issues in the black community didn't spring up. And this is my issue with what David was saying. I was like, you're either of two minds, one or two minds, right? You either think that the issues in our communities are byproducts of racial policy, racist policies that have been implemented over the last 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, right? Or it is your assertion that black people in America are just inherently more violent and more prone to crime. And if you're of the latter, that is literally the definition of racism.
Let's get a little controversial then.
All right.
Let's take that head on. You said that you could be either or.
I think there's only two. Yeah, I don't see any.
Do you think you could be a combination of both? For example, there are genetic differences between groups. There are. For example, black men, on average, may be stronger than white men, or maybe better basketball players. Do you agree to that? That they're more physically suited for certain tasks than on the average white person?
No.
Well, look at the NBA. What's your explanation for the NBA or the NFL?
Here's the explanation, fam. When you go to our neighborhoods, right? When you go to our neighborhoods, right? What is prevalent in every single park?
Football, basketball.
All right.
Yeah.
And do you ever see golf courses?
No, but we better at golf too.
Do you ever see tennis? I'm talking about the representation in the sport. Do you ever see tennis courts?
No.
Not in our communities. Do you ever see hockey rinks? No. So what you're doing is you're conflating the totality of the proportion of which people are represented, and you're discounting the socioeconomic factors that come into play.
So you're saying that white people and black people on average are similar when it comes to physical strength and physical, just like Asians tend to be in certain areas shorter than other Asians in other areas. That expresses itself in the genetic pool.
Being shorter and being physically stronger or better at a sport
Having
are two different things. Are very two different things. But again, what you're doing is you're not accounting for the environmental factors.
That is important. I said both. I said both. A combination of two. I was just trying to get to one.
Okay, but when you start saying genetic differences, like you have
they express themselves from environmental and from
but genetics,
nature and nurture.
Yes, they grow together. But to say that somebody is inherently genetic anything without accounting for the environment is just a misunderstanding of genetics.
I would never say that you don't account for the environment. I was trying to say that there are certain things that are expressed in us based on our genetic code. Okay. And then when you add environment into that, it either feeds it or it suppresses it. For example, white people are just as violent as black people. So then you have to take into account what is the environment that they're growing up in that may be, expressing it in one way or suppressing it in another way. For example, single motherhood is going up in the black community, but it is also going up in the white community as well. Mm-hmm. But it just so happened that it went up further with the black community because we were already behind. You know what I'm saying? We were already ahead of white people because they divided us. The slavery, they sold off, this family from that family. There were environmental things that contributed, and then you continue down the line, it's still expressing itself. We haven't course corrected, for example.
There's also
Now,
there's also policy things that was involved, like getting
yeah,
loans, like the drug war,
definitely,
like all of this stuff.
definitely. And
Okay,
then
go
we
ahead.
arrived here in 2020, right?
Yeah.
So we got what we got. We got the past. We can't
Okay.
change that.
Gotcha.
All right. We all agree. Then the question becomes, what do we do now? It's a twofold question. The first question is, what the hell can white people do to help or to get out of our way? Either they're helping or they're hurting us. Then the second question is, what the hell are we doing to help ourselves or hurt ourselves?
Right, and I wouldn't look at this as monolithic, right? I would look at as because we are a melting pot of society, right? And so, um, it has to be a zeitgeist shift, which is taking place right now, a cultural mindset shift to understand the fact that black folks in this country have a very unique history and have been set back, right? And you have people who say that shit is over, everything's even, and you have people who saying that shit is over, but everything is not even, right? So it's
Yeah.
not over,
Yeah.
and
See,
go ahead.
all right. Before the 60s happened, right? Black people was on a different path than America. Something happened fundamentally in the 60s to where things took a sharp turn to the negative side. The single motherhoods, families staying
Desegregation.
together, So there was something that took a major shift to a certain direction. Now, I read the book Black Rednecks and White Liberals.
Thomas
And
Sowell.
yeah, I'm a big Thomas Sowell fan.
That's
And
it.
it basically breaks down that a lot of the behaviors you see urban black people portraying, the slang and the way we dress and how we treat each other, some of the violence that comes from white rednecks from the South. That is still affecting us to this day. And most people say you acting white, they really think, oh, you speaking proper or you actually acting a certain way that they consider to be upper class or whatever the case may be. But that ghetto shit, that's white as well. So liberals have white liberals have told black people that if you're a victim, we care for you. And this is the type of black people that we support. If you're a well-spoken black person, if you're a Larry Elder, if you're a
Right.
Tim Scott, you don't get no sympathy from white people, white liberals. You don't get any sympathy. There's no Muriels of Thomas Sowell. There's a Muriel of plenty other black people. Tupac got Muriels, but there's no
He
Muriel
wasn't as
for
socially impactful. Like, what do you mean? That has nothing to do with anything.
to a certain type of black person. Because I don't know. I don't know your background, but I've been in situations where people will say you ain't black because you don't act a certain way. What is
Sure.
that way to act? And
Sure.
then it's the stigma that if you dress a certain way, if you talk a certain way, you're not truly black. And I'm not saying all black people subscribe to that, but there's a mentality in the black community that you ain't cool, you ain't hip if you don't subscribe to a certain lifestyle. That's
But
why
this is,
you won't.
but I hate this argument because it's not just the black community. Like, if you
Oh
look at,
yeah, of course not. It's
okay, okay,
not.
all right. Well, so as long as you
But we
agree with it,
talk we talking about the black
all
community.
right, bet,
Like
bet,
I'm not saying that other communities are not. You got Hell's Angels, you got all
bet,
these
bet.
crackheads in the redneck trailer park trash. It's a lot of poor of them motherfuckers too, right?
I got you. I got you.
Yeah. But there is a stigma that, for example, I'm a black conservative. Me and you having this conversation, perfectly
Mm-hmm.
decent conversation. I could go into a black neighborhood right now and say I'm a conservative, and the worst will be expected of me. Didn't say I was a Republican. Didn't say I agreed with one policy or the next policy. As soon as I say I'm a black conservative, what the fuck? You know what I mean?
Because
Where does that what the fuck come from?
it comes from.
Because
Okay, go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say it comes from uh, decades of Republicans espousing racist policies. That's where it
But
comes
we
from.
we already agreed that the Democrats have had a big part of hurting black community as well.
Yeah,
Maybe they're not equal, but the Democrats have done a major share of hurting the black community.
sure.
But that stigma is not there.
Because generally speaking, right, when you talk about democratic failed policies, right, when you talk about the '94 crime bill, or is it '93, whatever, when you talk about the crime bill, a lot of the Black Caucus was on board with that, right? And the reason why is because there was a high crime spike in the 80s and in the 90s, right? Because of the drug war that was going on. And so there was pressure to do something. And so their do something was wrong. And you won't find anybody a part of that bill today that says that was right. We did the right thing. Everybody knows it was wrong, right? And so the difference is the policies implemented by Democrats, and I say this reluctantly because anytime I'm fucking defending Democrats, bro, it's a shady day, right? But the policies that Democrats usually espouse are not intentionally to inflict harm. And I think that's the difference. Republicans intentionally are trying to implement voter suppression right now, intentionally gerrymander, intentionally, and they'll say whatever they say about it, dog. But there's a reason why. I don't know where you vote. Where you from?
I'm from Georgia.
You from Georgia? All right. Well, there's a reason why, like in Houston, for example, right? I live in the suburbs. I could walk to my next polling station. It's going to take me 15 minutes to vote for the presidential election, right? In our inner city in Houston, they shut down polling station after polling station after polling station to where you have to wait 7, 8, 9 hours to vote. Who has that fucking kind of time? And so there's a very distinct difference. What I believe is the byproduct of those legislations. Republicans don't even admit, and this is part of the reason. It's like, well, how can you ascribe intention to policies, right? There's always subsequent, not always, there's usually subsequent apologetic rhetoric from Democrats who say, we fucked that up. Whereas Republicans say, this is the way it is. This is the way it should be. This is the way it should be. And there's a very distinct difference, right? Because I can't tell you what's in a man's heart. You can never do that.
Yeah. I think Republicans have gotten to the point where it's
but just to answer your question, that's why I feel like when people say you're conservative, that's why, because of those reasons. Go ahead.
Yeah. I get you. When like for example, Republicans, I think they feel like they're fighting an uphill battle that they just can't win. No matter what they do, they're going to be labeled the racist. They're going to be labeled the.
Don't be racist, buddy.
But what I'm saying is, to them, it's a political move. To them, it's like, we already know we're not going to win this vote. The deck is stacked against us to the point where if we're going to win politically, we have to appeal to certain groups that we know that we can get and try to disencourage those people who won't vote for us to vote. Now, it's wrong. It's definitely wrong. But it's a political strategy that they've taken account for, which is costing them to this day. That's why I'm not a Republican. I don't agree with the Republicans or the Democrats on a lot of shit. They both practice crony capitalism. They both enable big corporations to screw over the little man.
Absolutely.
I see all of this, but on the conservative side, I think that there's this loophole, or there's a circular reasoning going on the left. It's like the right is racist. Look how many black people they got in the conservative movement, right? But if there's a black person who tries to be a conservative, then they get demonized and criticized. So you can't have it both ways. Because if you're going to change the Republican Party...
That's not true. This is what I was trying to explain to David, was like, black folks have always been used as a tool and a conduit for racism. That's not a new thing. This the whole Malcolm X house Negro, field Negro. Same thing. And what we're saying is, like, what we say when we see black conservatives, right? And when I say we, I see like progressive blacks or even Democratic blacks. What we say is like, you're shilling, because what you're doing is you're and it's it's very lucrative to be a black conservative, right? Political talking head, because you can always find who said, I think it was Malcolm X who said you'll always have a job if you're pushing the
He
interests
also said
for
that
them.
he also said that the white liberals were more dangerous than the white conservatives.
1,000%. So did MLK. Letter from Birmingham jail. It's the white. I agree, which is why I'm not a Democrat, dog. Like I
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
this is why being a progressive is very different, right? So I am on the left, right? Because I'm left on most policy positions, but being a progressive is not being a Democrat because Democrats, as you said, they're Republican light. And I'm very aware of that. I understand that. Like like I always get people say, "Well, Joe Biden's a racist too," and I'm like, "Yeah, I agree. I agree. That nigga say
Yeah.
racist shit all the time." But so what I look at, so when I look at who to vote for, I look at, okay, what is the best pathway to get us on the line where we have real equality and we have real opportunities for people, right? That's what I look at. I don't look at like all the rest of shit is just noise. Like even these debates, it's just it's no, it's entertaining, right? And I think
Yeah.
this is the shit that America deserves, but it's just noise, man.
Yeah, I think that I took a strategic step when I went for Trump in 2016. And the strategic step that I was thinking about at the time was this will be an awakening. And this will awaken people up to the realities of the political system that we now have in this country. And this will cause the movement to rise and people will really get active and start trying to make real changes. I didn't account for the fact that
But say
there
you
will be
saw that in 2016, boy, you a bad man.
I'm that type of person. I'm a history buff. I study like the 48 laws of power. That's something that I saw Trump exhibiting a lot of behaviors in there. He never apologizes. Um, just different things that I was like, if Trump could be this, if Trump becomes president, those people who just hang around and don't vote no more, you got no excuse now. Now is it time to wake up and realize I need to take political policy serious. I need to take what's happening in our country serious. What I didn't account for was how extreme both sides, the people on the fringes, would try to tear us apart and pull us even further.
I hate the horseshoe theory, right? Because I don't think they're the same. Extreme right is fascism. We agree on
Yeah.
that? Extreme left is Medicare for all, my nigga.
No, 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 no,
Yes, it
no, no,
is.
no, no, no.
Yes, it is.
It,
What's extreme left?
like I said, communism.
That's Medicare for all, bro. At a policy level, like like there's nothing inherently dangerous about extreme leftism, and I'm not even banging for that, right?
Yeah, I
But
get you.
but like the mindset of an extreme right is like,
Racist,
yeah, the mindset of an
fascist.
extreme left is just like, dog, I want poor people to eat free. Like
But
that's
those things, one is more, one looks better on the outside, but it's once you get into the bones of it, you realize that shit ain't all sweet. There are plenty of people in the past who have that same mindset that you have, and it don't turn out all the way. It never turns out the way they expected it to. And the reason is human beings are so complex. And when you start saying that we want equality for everybody all across the board, you're gonna have to start making sacrifices to make that happen. I don't think that people who are on the progressive side want the communism that happened in Russia, in the Soviet Union or Venezuela. I don't think they want that. I'm not saying that they're not good-hearted people. What I'm saying is you can't sit here and tell me there are not negative consequences to that ideology if we go there. You have to be able to say, you know what, I'm worried about this. Can you give me a few things that you're worried about that could go wrong with your plan? Because I can tell you multiple things that can go wrong with fascism.
I don't know. So can I.
We have to take a realistic approach. There has
Okay,
to be some downsides.
the pitfalls of my ideal, because I wouldn't say I would never bang for communism. I'm not a communist, right? Um, I think idealistically everybody is. Idealistically, I think everybody's a communist, where there is no class, right? That's the real definition of communism, where there's no class system and everybody is everything. The government owns the means of production. I'm not sure I'm on board with that, right?
You're not a communist.
Yeah, that's why I said I would
Yeah,
never bang for
yeah,
communism.
yeah.
Yeah. And so what I would like to see is a balance of the free market and social programs. but a lot more heavy towards social programs, right? Because when I look at our economy, right, I was reading this book called The Deficit Myth, and it talks about our deficit, and it talks about how the Federal Reserve balances interest rates. And I mentioned this before, and there's something called it's an acronym. I believe I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's called the NAIRU, NAIRU. And what it is, it's the sweet spot that economists say that we need unemployment in order for inflation not to rise. Okay, and so if that's the case, if economists agree, if our Fed agrees that we need a certain amount of unemployment in order for our economy to be stable, then we have an inherent responsibility to those people who are unemployed for social programs. Like we don't have like how and if you don't, you're fucking evil. Like I
Yeah.
cannot square those two things. And
Yeah.
this is not like I didn't make this shit up. This is what he testified in Congress
Mm.
about this 2% unemployment rate. Like we need 2% unemployment in order to have a functioning economy. And that blows my fucking mind. So what can go wrong in my you asked the question, what can go wrong? I think the transition too fast. I think the transition too fast because a lot of staunch free market capitalists um, like to say or like to pretend that the free market can take care of everything. I just absolutely wholeheartedly disagree. I think it just lends itself to greed. But there's people who are so entrenched in that idea that they're willing to fight and die for that shit. But
Yeah.
they do love social programs when in certain or government subsidies when it benefits them.
Yeah. Let me make 2 points on that. The first one is uh my conservative values come in conflict. For example, I'm for the free market, but also I'm for patriotism. I'm for the love of my country. And when the free market gets to the point where it no longer benefits the society, that's not patriotism. That's tyranny.
Say that one more
I
time, G.
Yeah, I said that when the free market gets to the point where it's not taking care of the American people,
Right.
that's not patriotism. That's tyranny. There, I have to be able to account for the patriotism value, that the love for country, to love your fellow man and fellow American, and I have to also square that with the free market principle. So I'm not with this whole 100% free market to fix every single thing. If that was the case, we wouldn't need a government at all. And I'm also not for the idea that the government should be the all be all either. So there has to be this balance. And the problem I have, com- the the free market can fix certain things, and certain things it just can't. Now, you talked about the 2% unemployment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, for example, there could be a new invention that fixes that. It could be. Should we wait around for it? Hell no. We have to treat life as it is. So when you talk about social programs, there is a need for a social safety net. Then we have to, once we agree that there is a need for a social safety net, then we have to decide what is the best social safety net, what's the most effective. We can't just throw out safety nets and not factor in the positives and the negatives and see which one is the net outgain. So when you talk about food stamps, welfare, look how many people it's fed. Look how many people has it housed.
I'm a
Then
product
you
of
have to,
food stamps.
yeah, and then you have to look at the other side and say, okay, what is the negatives of the food stamp program or the government housing? Is it enabling certain percentage of the population to ride the welfare state off until they die and recreate children who would do the same? Is that a potential that we have to account for? And is it a net positive for us? If it is, I'm for it. But once we agree that there is a social network, safety networks, then we get into the nitty gritty on what it is that we actually want and how do we implement it. And I think that's where the fundamental disagreement is between the conservatives and reasonable conservatives. I'm not talking about your right wing nut, and reasonable progressives and liberals. And I really think fundamentally we agree on a lot. We just disagree on how to best carry it out.
You talking about fundamentally as liberals and conservatives, or me? Or
Conservatives.
to me, you?
conservatives I know that most people have their idea on what a conservative is, but I guarantee you, from all the conservative circles that I run in, the studying I've done on conservatism, most people have the wrong idea on what a conservative is, and that may even include a lot of conservatives. You know,
Okay.
so
I,
we have
I
to be careful. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I don't disagree, and so I will probably get a flack from a lot of my left leaning uh,
Yeah.
counterparts by saying this is that, and maybe this is a little bit idealistic of me, is that I do believe that at the end of the day we all want the same thing, and we have different ideas about getting there. I think the difference is the consequences in which the conservatives say the pathway is are detrimental to people, and they refuse to see how.
And if I was talking to a conservative, they would probably say the same thing about the liberals. And it's
Yeah, but I mean, I
I
just
get a lot of flack too. I get a lot of flack, and the reason that I have no problem saying I'm conservative and being a conservative is because those same people you trying to reach, I have a better chance at reaching them.
but this is
You
what I'm
you
saying. So, what exactly are you conservative on? Okay, you're conservative on guns. Well, but I don't even think you would be conservative on guns, right? Because there aren't many Democrats who are like no guns,
anti-second.
ban guns.
It's
They
iffy
just
about
want
that.
they want background checks, right? They want
Yeah,
and they
but
want
it's certain things that the Democrats say they want that nothing is straightforward. They say they want something, but some usually is hiding what's really behind the meat of it. Most people don't look into policies enough to see how the real effect of it is going to actually play out. But I'm pro Second Amendment strongly, and I do realize that there are certain regulations and certain things that I can't have, and certain I get that comes is baked into the cake.
all right, well that's
Um,
not. I really want to go like point by point because when you say
yeah,
you're conservative, I still am confused. But
yeah,
all right, so when you say that, that's not inherently a conservative standpoint. There are plenty
yeah.
Democrats that agree with that. So what else do you have?
That yeah. Being conservative is really more of an ideology than it is a policy thing.
Well,
For
sure,
example,
sure, but
yeah,
we vote on policy. Well, we should vote on policy, not ideology. But
yeah. That's why I say you should be able to be a conservative and vote for a Democrat. You should vote on the policies that best affect you and align with what you feel like, you know, what you want to get out of life.
sure, but I think as time goes on, these definitions begin to evolve.
Yeah, true, true. But if you have a definition of conservatism, which is better than the definition that you're getting now, I'm gonna fight to keep that definition or to
No,
take
yeah, no,
certain
I
things
don't. I
back.
don't do that. So that's one thing I don't do is I don't.
Yeah,
Excuse me. I don't. I don't tell people what their words mean. All I
yeah.
say is, what is your understanding of it, and then I work from there. Like it makes no point. There's no sense because I do understand. Like that's one thing that's a usually a conservative point of view is like liberals are changing the definitions of words. I'm like, my nigga, all these fucking words are made up, dog. Like there's no such thing as a real definition. Like it's a,
No, I think the argument is words evolve naturally. And I
yeah.
think they probably saying that liberals are trying to force words to evolve when it's not doing it naturally.
Well,
That
there's no such thing as natural if that's the case. Because if my fundamental understanding of racism is different from this group's, right? We have a fundamental difference of understanding of the word racism, right? We can understand its roots, but how we implement it in our lives is different. And so the natural part, all that to me, all that is dog whistles of we don't.
if I came on your show and I said racism don't mean what you say it mean, racism really means that you dislike children.
Right.
You're gonna tell me, bro, that's not what racism is, right?
I say that's exactly what I say. I say that's not my understanding of that, bro. I don't think you understand the definition, and I
But I'm
don't know
changing
any.
it. I'm changing it right now. I'm changing it to you.
Sure, and I think that's a hyperbolic example. But what I'm saying is, uh, words naturally evolve.
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
racism, if you look up racism, right, and then maybe it's changed now. I haven't actually looked up the definition, but like when I was coming up, it was a superiority complex, right? because of a race
Yeah,
or
believing
ethnicity.
one race is inferior to you
Yeah,
based on that
by just by those
characteristic.
traits.
Yeah.
Well, now it's evolved into a way that can be implemented through institutions, through biases, through a lot of different things. And so this is the evolution of that term, right? A lot of people don't accept that, but that's how the word has evolved. And to me, that's the opposite, right? And to be a conservative is runs in opposition with the very nature of human beings. Because what are you conserving? You're conserving what was, and
If you
and
look
there's
up
nothing that doesn't
if
progress.
if you look up the terms, if you look up conservatism and read any philosophy on conservatism,
Right.
conservatism is not the idea that you just conserve what was.
Mm-hmm.
It's conserving the things that we know that works. And some people tend to think certain things work when they don't work, and we should get rid of them. For example, you can't be pro free market and against change. You just can't. The free market by itself drives change.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a conservative thinking that the free market is not going to somehow provide all this new technology and stuff, and we're going to somehow stay the same, you're losing your mind. That would defeat conservatism on its head right then and there. Um,
Well, then they would have to concede that everything changes, and there's really no point of
but
of
there are some things.
conserving.
There are some things that are constant as we know it. For
like
example,
like what?
human beings express themselves in certain ways throughout nature. For example, you're going to have your murderers, you're going to have your child molesters, you're going to have your liberal minded people, you're going to have your conservative minded people. These are things that we see consistently throughout the history of mankind. Men fight, women bicker and gossip. We love each other, we hate each other. These are things that are fundamental in nature. If you look up conservatism and read up on it, nature is the big factor in the conservative mindset. Um, and the reason, for example, we have social media right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's a new technology that everybody's using, but it's not changing human nature. It's amplifying the human nature that's already there. We're not.
I would disagree with that.
You think so? You think
Uh,
it's act?
I think the data says differently.
Well,
If
okay.
you
Let me
look at
clear up what I'm
okay,
saying. Let
all
me,
right,
because I might have misspoke on that. What I'm saying is, when you introduce social media into human society,
mm-hmm.
it's natural to think. If anybody thought that social media would just bring everybody together, they were fundamentally wrong in their thoughts, right? If you account for what social media is, I would automatically assume this is not this is going to have some real bad impacts. Everybody has a voice now. Every You give every human being a microphone, you're asking for trouble. A conservative should be able to look at that and say, you know what? I could see this because by human nature, you don't want to give everybody a microphone. Does that make sense?
So is it a conservative view to stifle free speech?
No, 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 no. You can have free speech. You just
That's giving
you,
everybody a
you,
microphone though.
you can have free speech, but the ability for your microphone to be so big to where it's reaching people in China, that means the good and the worst of us, all those ideas get amplified to a point where it used to be where if you was crazy in your city, everybody in the city just knew you was crazy. But now you can connect with every crazy motherfucker in the planet, and y'all could be crazy together.
Yeah, but on the flip side of that, like if you were an atheist in a Christian community, right? And now you have communication with other atheists where you had no other kinship or a communal love or acceptance. That is a very positive thing.
It is, and that's also a part of human nature. For example, Christians dominate the West, right? Christians are the majority of the population, right, in America.
Yeah.
If atheists claim all the time that Christians are oppressing atheists, that they're trying to implement religious policies in the government, they're putting up Ten Commandment statues on public land or whatever the case may be, right?
Mm-hmm.
If atheists became the majority in a society in America, I promise you're going to see some of the same behavior exhibited from atheists that was exhibited by the Christians. I promise you're going to see it. I see it now. I see atheists do some of the same things that I was like, I joined an atheist group in Facebook, and I'll make one little controversial thing, and I get kicked out. It's like a dogma. Hey, bro, we don't talk about that here. Get kicked out of the group.
But
I thought we were supposed to be open minded. I
but
thought we were
but
supposed to be
but by the
accepting.
but by the very nature of what Christianity and what atheism is, that cannot be the case. What doctrine would we put up as a monument for atheism? What
It doesn't become a religious philosophy. It becomes a political one. That's
what
why
what document is the atheist political philosophy?
uh, if you ask me, I think it's probably wokeism at this moment or leftism.
That makes no sense at all, my nigga.
I'm telling you, atheists. Well,
Are you
atheists are
saying are you saying atheism is equivalent to social justice?
no. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there's a movement within atheism, and a lot of atheists agree with this. I mean, I don't know if you know David Smalley. He's a big debater on religion, but a lot of even Sam Harris. You know Sam Harris?
Yeah.
Yeah, Sam Harris they agree that atheism is morphing into some sense of a religion. It's becoming like if you don't think like what we think you're supposed to think like, you get outcast. You can't be a part of this group.
But that wasn't the claim. The claim you made was that if atheism is the majority in the country, they would try to oppress the religious views of
Yeah,
Christians like Christians do atheists. And what I'm
yeah.
saying is it's just pragmatically impossible because there's no doctrine that atheists follow, as you know.
It will become a political one. It
But
wouldn't become
okay, okay,
a
okay, okay,
doctrine of
okay.
yeah.
What is the atheist political doctrine?
For example, if atheists were the majority in this country, abortion. I think most atheists are pro-choice. Could we
Yes,
agree to that?
yes.
Imagine being a Christian trying to come out in an atheist society trying to say we should ban all abortions. You're gonna get shut down quick.
They get shut down quick in this society.
And that's because atheists wasn't shutting nobody down when they had small numbers.
It's not
When they
atheism.
started
It's
to
not
grow,
atheism because it's not. What you're doing is you're saying some atheists hold this belief, therefore it is an atheist tendency,
no,
atheistic
no, 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 no,
tendency.
no. I'm not saying. Look,
Well,
I'm not saying.
this is what I'm saying. What you're saying is it would be the same, and what I'm saying is it cannot be the same. And the reason why is if I post the 10 commandments, I can go to the exact doctrine, the Christian doctrine. I can tell you exactly what I want to be implemented. They can directly defend or justify their political view with their holy book, right? As a Christian.
Yeah.
As an atheist, I can't defend. It's just a position on a claim. I can't defend my political view with my atheism.
Well,
You would have to what you would have to do is you have to have philosophical tenets on the reasons why you believe what you believe
yes,
politically.
and some
This
would
is why
say
it cannot be the same.
before Christianity was a Christian was written down in a Christian book, there were people who were practicing Christians. They had rules and things that they were supposed to abide by, right? To be a Christian. When Paul was writing his letters and stuff, there was no Bible put together. You get what I'm
Okay.
saying? But there was still a group of people who identified as Christian that followed certain rules and guidelines that they thought you should as a Christian. I know atheism is the lack of a belief. Some people like to say atheism is you believe there is no God. I personally prescribe to the fact that I lack a belief in God. You know what I'm saying? I can never prove 100% that there is no God, right? But we as humans, we find things to rally around. Right now, atheist movement, there's an atheist movement. Like David Silverman was the leader of American Atheists, right?
Hmm.
This was an organization that agreed on certain tenets and certain things that they were fighting for, mostly anti-religion,
No, they were fighting for
equality, and
no, a secular society to where it was. I shouldn't have to say one nation under God in school or to take those kind of things out of to be governmentally implemented so that you can live a peaceful secular life, which is granted to us by the founding
by the
doctrines, right?
by the Constitution
And
and the,
so this is why, I mean, it's a minute point to argue, but it's just it cannot be the same because there is no atheistic tenet. It is just a
yeah,
position.
but I'm not saying that it will mimic Christianity exactly. I'm not saying that we're going to write a book, even though there's an atheist Bible, but I'm not going to say that we're going to write a philosophy down that you have to abide by. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is when any group becomes the majority in a society, history has shown that the majority tends to be privileged above the minority. Just like we as black people don't get the same privileges as white people. And they're not a religion. Do you get what I'm saying?
That's a controversial conservative take, my brother. Now I'm with you though, but all I'm saying is if if we as atheists, right, were to be the majority in this country, our implementation of policy, our implementation of any doctrines would not be based on anything that is not falsifiable.
It wouldn't be based on doctrine. Yeah, it won't be based on dogma.
And that's a very distinct difference. It would have to be based on something. It would have to be based on a philosophy, right? And this is why it's a very like secular humanism.
It becomes religious like though.
It can, but there's not a tenet of it. Anything
of course not.
Like there's cults that become religious alike because they follow some nigga who says
I'm just saying that I'm just saying that the oppressed can become the oppressors in a sense.
Sure. And to your broader point, this is a longer tangent, but I just disagree with the premise that human nature always lends itself to I would agree with the fact that human nature always lends itself to greed and corruption, but the reason why I had contention with your premise was because if I don't agree that all atheists came to their conclusion by like rationality and logic. Sometimes people just want to buck the system, right?
Yeah.
But if you have a system that is set in place that is based on rationality, that is based on a heavy scientific literacy, I believe you have a starting point for a much more humane and equal society.
I don't know, because you could rationalize your way to murdering somebody. Like,
that's not rational. Murdering somebody isn't rational.
Why isn't it? Let's say you had a chance to kill Hitler. I mean, right. You could rationalize your way to murdering Hitler. You know, I could save all these Jewish lives. I could do it if I just murdered Hitler.
But let's not go with that analogy though, because you don't know Hitler's going to be Hitler, right?
No, I'm saying if you were there while he is Hitler, you popped up in his room as he's Hitler, running the country,